For a long time, I've been watching the shakeups going on in the world of AAA video games. A few days ago, a game developer, or dev, offered advice to gaming companies that stopped me in my tracks. It was just so perfect. And yet, I knew Christian leaders would not understand it even if they ever saw it. So today, let me show you what this game dev said and why it's such great advice for Christian leaders. And then I'll show you why they won't listen to it. Hello everyone and welcome back. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026. This is Roll to Disbelieve, and I'm Captain Cassidy. Thank you for joining me. This is a topic dear to my heart. I do, after all, like my vidya. And wait till you hear what the advice was. Ooh, I think it's definitely something Christian leaders should, but won't, accept. And this topic of bad solutions and guesses for decline, it got me thinking of something I did as a little kid. When I was, 9 or 10 years old, my mom got way into coupons and rebates. Oh, she had boxes and boxes stuffed with labels and clipped send-in offers for free stuff. And sometimes my little sister and I, we would get really excited about something that she was saving up to get. One time it was something cat-related, like send in X number of labels from this one brand and you get a calendar or playing cards or something. Well, my sister and I wanted this thing, but we didn't want to wait for the glacial pace of label collecting that my mother was doing to save up for it. We decided to help her out. On our next trip to the base's grocery store, their commissary they call it, we proudly presented her with fistfuls of labels. Yeah, we had gone to the cat food aisle and ripped the labels off, about 100 cans of cat food. It was a lot. For some reason, Mom was not appreciative. We hot-footed it out of there with a quickness. If you were the poor sap working there that day and staring at shelves full of gleaming, label-free, silvery cans of cat food that day, I'm sorry. I apologize to you from the bottom of my heart. We saw the problem that our mom faced and we tried to fix it, but our solution was not the right one. Before we get going on another terrible solution going on in Christianity, I would like to thank my patrons and supporters. Your support keeps Roll to Disbelieve going. Thank you so much for making my work possible. If you're hearing this and you're not one of them yet, I would love to have you on board as well. To find options, please check out the end of today's write-up. It'll be on patreon.com under Roll to Disbelieve, one word, or over at our official website, rolltodisbelieve.com. Thank you for whatever you decide to do. And now, our situation report. The co-creator of Path of Exile offers some incredibly good advice for more than just game development. Path of Exile is a mostly single-player fantasy role-playing video game. It was released in 2013. Its co-creator, Chris Wilson, recently started up a new studio of his own to work on some new game or other. And on May 26th, he offered some advice for game developers, or devs. The article says, quote, "There's one thing that he," meaning Wilson, "avoids when trying to decide on a path forward. Surveys. Why? Well, he sums it up neatly with a quote from Magic the Gathering head designer Mark Rosewater. Your audience is good at recognizing problems and bad at solving them." Unquote. Wilson goes on to explain that players can offer invaluable insights about where the game is flawed or where it's failing. But taking players' advice about fixes is a bad idea, because almost no players are professionals in the gaming industry. So they don't understand critical game stuff like balanced equipment and difficulty levels. They don't need to understand that to play. Well, his advice sounded eerily like something Christian leaders ought to hear. It's not the only time I've seen something in the video game industry that reminded me of that religious world. Today, I'm going to show you those similarities and why religious leaders are not bloody likely to heed any of the good advice game devs could offer them. First, Let's briefly cover the situation in the American Christosphere. Christianity's decline continues, though actual affiliation levels have stabilized a bit for a little while. I mean, at least until Gen Alpha hits adulthood in just a few years here. Early indications suggest that they're even less likely to affiliate with Christianity than Zoomers are. And in response to this upcoming demographic bomb, nothing Christian leaders do seems to have any impact whatsoever on membership levels in their churches. They can be super nice and do lots of charity, sure, fine, whatever. They can pound Bibles all day long and bellow about sin, sure. They can try their best to chain their members to authoritarian power structures, which they call discipleship, and they'll do this even if they don't have any real temporal power over the members' lives. It doesn't matter what they try. Churches bleed members, and they close anyway. Over the years, 13 now and counting, we have had some fun examining why Christian leaders think they're in decline. These are always really fun guesses, too. They have proven incapable of accurately naming the real reasons. They always have been. In 2014, we covered the baptism drought of the Southern Baptist Convention, or SBC. That was their term for it, by the way, baptism drought. It's not me being snarky. At the time, they were offering 5 nonsensical guesses about why most churches weren't baptizing anyone over the age of 6. Yes, seriously. Yeah, they were positive that if they only found a way to repackage their core message for millennials, who were the young adults at the time, and if they could do a better job celebrating the baptisms they do bag, oh yeah, things would totally turn around. They didn't. In 2018, we talked about evangelicals blaming women for their decline. Yeah, see, churches were just too feminized, and it was scaring off all the evangelical men who were super manly and tough, but strangely more sensitive than hothouse orchids about being catered to. It was so odd. In 2023, Dan Foster over at Medium made a few guesses about the decline. They completely missed the reality of it, of course. He thought that if Christians could only act more like he imagines first-century Christians acting, that would do it. The same year, 2023, Russell Moore declared that if evangelicals just stopped being so darned nostalgic, they would have more revivals. And Tanita Maddox, who is becoming a big name in apologetics, suggested that older evangelicals use social media to privately message teenagers to invite them to church functions, and yes, it was as horrifying as it sounds. Across the years, evangelicals tend to insist that if they just find a better way to phrase their ideas, that'll reverse the decline. They have, to use Preston Sprinkle's phrase, a posture problem, not a message problem, ever, because the message is always perfect in broken systems. I don't think I've ever seen a really good Christian guess about why they're in decline. Christians tend to insist that the solution means adopting their idea of perfect Christianity, no matter what kind of Christians they are. Like video game players, they know when something's wrong, yes, but they can't ever understand why, much less offer solutions to fix it. And it's not to say that there isn't significant overlap between conservative video game commentators on YouTube and conservative Christians. But every time I see one of these conservative commentators freaking out over woke games and the modern audience, I think the same thing. Nobody would care about a game's ideological stance if it were a fun game. A game's wokeness isn't actually the problem with it. The actual problem is in another castle, and it's something that's a lot harder to catch in a bottle and describe. In both church and gaming industries, I see this disparity, this asymmetry between players or members and the devs or leaders. But those with power in both industries can only command when those below them allow it. I have yet to see Christians, especially evangelicals, who understand that it's the loss of temporal power that spelled the end of Christianity's cultural dominance of America. Once upon a time, Christians could make life very difficult for people who refused to join and support their local churches. And That's exactly what they did. Their leaders had tied visible adherence to Christianity to American patriotism and to Americans' most idealized qualities, like honesty and bravery. In that environment, dissenters became fair game for what I like to call Christian love. At the very least, a dissenter could expect the loss of all their friends, their marriage, their family, their livelihood. In some areas that were really under tight control, they could face violence, property vandalism, destruction. But after World War II, funny thing happened. Americans began moving around like they never had before. And in that movement, they discovered freedom from church-based control. It became a lot easier to leave oppressive churches and religiously dominated small towns for cities that were full of people who didn't know them or give a rat's ass where they attended church. Over the next few decades, it only became easier for Christians to drift away from churches. And with so many moving targets around them nowadays, Christian love couldn't focus on them all. Worse, the punishment for dissent didn't draw many people to churches. Instead, potential new recruits had to be wooed. They had to be won, just like any other consumer in any other marketplace must be. I'm seeing the same thing happening in video games, especially in the super expensive AAA blockbuster games arena. Studios spend hundreds of millions of dollars on these games, while funding agents demand significant input into the game's themes, its characters, its setting, everything. And amid all that interference, they're trying to make something that will appeal to enough consumers to justify the expense of making the game. But increasingly, these games aren't doing well. There have been some big AAA flops in the last few years, like Concord and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And they speak, I think, to consumers' dissatisfaction with this too many cooks in the kitchen development process. Meanwhile, game studios that know their audience and care only about pleasing that audience skyrocket to success. Like Dark Souls. 10 years ago, Dark Souls looked at the increasing ease and hand-holding of video games, said, "Oh, fuck that noise," and delivered an intense, incredibly difficult experience that turned out to be exactly what their audience wanted. But I don't think many Christian leaders even know what audience they want to find, much less what consumer experience they want to focus on offering. It's the new normal amid Christianity's decline. A religious marketplace where Christianity is just another product on the shelves. I don't think most Christian leaders like knowing that they need to find an audience, much less that they need to find a consumer experience they can actually deliver consistently and reliably. The closest thing to what I'm talking about today is the seeker-sensitive model. Mostly, it's megachurches. They cater to people that really don't like church, really don't like the super deep stuff about church. They just want somewhere they can come and have fun and hang out and feel really Jesus-y that day. Evangelicals, predictably, hate the seeker-sensitive model. One Calvinist hardliner, Paul Carter, wrote in 2019 about one church he attended that used that model. He wrote, quote, "We would get people in the door by playing contemporary music, singing contemporary songs, speaking contemporary jargon, and addressing contemporary issues. Then, at some unspecified point in the future, we would transition into more meaty and substantial things." Unquote. The thing is, for all that criticism, when we look at churches that are actually growing nowadays, they're usually megachurches. And megachurches do tend to like that model. When a megachurch comes to town, it is only after extensive market research. It's on par with a fast food franchise at least. The people that are opening these churches know who the potential customers are, and they know what those customers are going to want in terms of programs and perks. The planners of these churches even pick their locations for very specific reasons. Nothing is accidental about a megachurch. It grows because it is positioned to grow. very naturally. On the other hand, most pastors who start churches don't do anything close to that level of research before opening their doors. They might vaguely think, an area needs a church like theirs. They might want to live around that area. Maybe they'll claim that Jesus told them out of the blue to go open a church there, like they weren't even thinking about it beforehand. Most church pastors, I would venture to guess, think that market research is just too earthly. It's not okay. It's anathema. It indicates a basic lack of trust in Jesus. And their attitude means that consumer choice is the one force they are absolutely not prepared to face. And it's what really spells the decline of Christianity. But church leaders really only have themselves to blame for this new normal for their product, which of course is active membership in their churches. Even their hardliners, who insist that the only thing you need to do to grow is preach the word, they still cheerfully position their product, that active membership, as a life-enriching, life-changing, life-enhancing one. And I can see why. Without being able to force people to join, their target customers have to be made to feel that church membership is essential in some other way. Simple doctrinal agreement, not enough. And as an example, I want to show you the site for Grace Baptist Church. They're amazing because their internet presence goes back to 1998, almost 30 years of Wayback Machine captures. It's beautiful. Back in 1998, their website assured visitors, "You have a place at Grace." But by 2012, which is when the decline was getting rolling, their site began to promise that they were changing lives that change the world. Nowadays, their site promises people that their church provides, quote, "a life-changing experience with God," unquote. And they are not alone in this marketing. Most churches position membership the same way. Trevin Wax, who is a Southern Baptist Calvinist hardliner, say that 10 times fast, he loved telling us in an essay in 2015 about this one church he attended as a kid. He says it changed his entire life. And he calls its approach God, not gimmicks. He attributes the church's success to divine approval. Anything else is just gimmicks to him. But for every church that succeeds, like the one in Wax's post, another dozen fall apart despite using much the same operational formula and holding the exact same doctrinal stances. Trevin Wax is just one of thousands of other onlookers who are convinced they know exactly how to keep a church from disintegrating. But in reality, he is just as clueless as all those YouTube gaming guys who think they know exactly how to make a game a bestseller. In the end, I don't know the answer that would reverse the decline of any one particular church. I know what won't work, what doesn't work, what can't work. I can see their game's pain points, its flaws, its systemic problems, yes. Like this game dev Chris Wilson is wise to note, that doesn't mean I can reverse a specific church's decline. But then again, neither can the Trevin Waxes of the Christosphere, nor any other onlookers. The answers are not cut and dried. They are not able to be boiled down to some Jesus-y sounding one-size-fits-all approach. Religious consumers don't have all the time in the world to waste on broken church marketing promises, any more than gamers have all the money in the world to go buy all the new video games. So we gotta prioritize, don't we? And that's exactly what we do. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Next up, speaking of Trevin Wax, this Calvinist hardliner is trying his best to make the SBC's current purity spiral sound perfectly divine. We'll check him out next time. Until then, this is Captain Cassidy signing off. Have a marvelous midweek, and we'll see you soon.